March 18th, 1990, 1:24 in the morning, Boston, Massachusetts. St. Patrick's Day has just ended. The streets are quiet. Most of the city is asleep. But at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, 2 security guards are finishing their night shift. In less than 2 hours, their lives will change forever. And 13 priceless masterpieces will vanish into the night. This is the story of the greatest unsolved art heist in history. A crime so brazen, so perfectly executed, that 35 years later, the FBI still has no idea who did it. $500 million in stolen art. Paintings by Rembrandt, Vermeer, Degas, gone. And despite a $10 million reward, the largest in private history, not a single piece has ever been recovered. This isn't just a heist. This is a mystery that has obsessed investigators, art lovers, and amateur sleuths for over 3 decades. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this case remains one of the most baffling crimes ever committed. Let me take you back to where this story begins. Not in 1990, but over a century earlier. Because to understand what was stolen, you need to understand the woman who built this collection. Isabella Stewart Gardner was born in 1840 in New York City to a wealthy family. She married John Lowell Gardner Jr., a Boston businessman, and together they became 2 of the most prominent art collectors in America. But Isabella wasn't just rich, she was brilliant, eccentric, fearless. At a time when women were expected to stay home and host tea parties, Isabella traveled the world. She went to Egypt, to Japan, to Venice. She attended Buddhist temples and walked through bazaars. She collected art not because it was expensive, but because it moved her, and she had impeccable taste. Over decades, Isabella amassed one of the finest private art collections in the world. Paintings by Rembrandt, Vermeer, Titian, Botticelli, sculptures, tapestries, furniture. Each piece was carefully chosen, each had a story. But Isabella didn't want her collection locked away in a vault. She wanted it shared. So in 1903, she built a museum. Not just any museum, a palace. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston's Fenway neighborhood was designed to look like a 15th century Venetian palazzo. 4 stories surrounding a stunning courtyard filled with flowers, sculptures, and natural light. Every room was arranged by Isabella herself. She didn't organize by period or artist. She arranged by feeling. A Rembrandt might hang next to a Whistler. A Chinese vase might sit beside an Italian tapestry. It was unconventional, personal, magical. When Isabella died in 1924, she left behind a very specific will. The museum would remain open to the public, but nothing could be moved. Not a single painting, not a chair, not a vase. Everything had to stay exactly as she arranged it, forever. For decades, the Gardner Museum was a hidden gem, not as famous as the Museum of Fine Arts down the street, but beloved by those who knew it. Art students came to sketch, scholars came to study. Tourists wandered through, enchanted by the courtyard and the intimacy of the collection. And then, in 1990, everything changed. March 17th, 1990, St. Patrick's Day. Boston is a city that takes St. Patrick's Day seriously. The parade, the bars, the parties, it's one of the biggest nights of the year. By midnight, the celebrations are winding down. The streets are emptying. And at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, 2 security guards are settling in for a quiet night shift. Their names were Richard Abath and Randy Heston. Abath was 23 years old, a musician. He took the night guard job to pay the bills while he worked on his music. Heston was older, more experienced. The museum closed at 5 p.m. After that, the guards were alone. Their job was simple: monitor the security system, do hourly patrols, make sure no one broke in. The museum had motion detectors, alarms on the doors and windows. But here's the thing: the security wasn't great. There were no cameras inside the museum. The motion detectors didn't cover every room, and the guards weren't armed. They had panic buttons, radios, but if something went wrong, they were on their own. At 1:24 a.m., there was a knock at the side door. Richard Abath was at the security desk. He looked at the intercom monitor. Two men stood outside. They were wearing Boston police uniforms, dark blue, badges, hats. They looked official. One of them spoke into the intercom. "Police, we're responding to a disturbance call." Abath hesitated. There hadn't been any disturbance. The night had been quiet. But these were cops, or at least they looked like cops. And Abath made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He buzzed them in. The moment the door opened, everything changed. The two men walked in calmly, confidently. They told Abath they were investigating a disturbance in the area. They asked if he'd seen anything unusual. Abath said no. Everything had been quiet. Then one of the men said, "You look familiar. I think there's a warrant out for you." Abath froze. There wasn't a warrant. He hadn't done anything wrong. But he was young, nervous, and these were police officers, or so he thought. "Step out from behind the desk," one of them said. Abath did. And the moment he stepped away from the security desk, away from the panic button, the thieves made their move. "This is a robbery," one of them said. "Don't give us any trouble, and you won't get hurt." Abath's hands went up. His heart was pounding. The other guard, Randy Heston, was upstairs doing a patrol. The thieves called him down on the radio. "We need you at the security desk." Heston came down. The moment he saw Abath with his hands up and two men in police uniforms, he knew something was wrong. But it was too late. The thieves ordered both guards to lie face down on the floor. They pulled out duct tape and handcuffs. They bound the guards' hands behind their backs, wrapped duct tape around their heads, covering their eyes. Then they dragged them to the basement and cuffed them to pipes. "Don't move," one of the thieves said. "We'll be back to check on you." And then they went upstairs. For the next 81 minutes, the thieves had free rein of one of the most important art museums in America, and they knew exactly what they were doing. The thieves moved through the museum with purpose. This wasn't random. They had a plan. Their first stop was the Dutch room on the second floor. This room held some of the museum's most valuable pieces, and hanging on the wall was a painting that would become the most famous missing artwork in the world. The Concert by Johannes Vermeer. Painted around 1664, it's one of only 34 known Vermeer paintings in existence. It shows three figures making music in a sunlit room. The brushwork is luminous. The composition is perfect. It's considered one of the greatest masterpieces of the Dutch Golden Age. Today, it's valued at over $200 million. The thieves cut it out of its frame, not carefully, not with precision. They used a knife and sliced through the canvas. Art historians would later say this was heartbreaking. Vermeer's canvases are fragile. Cutting them causes damage that can never be fully repaired. But the thieves didn't care. They weren't art lovers, they were criminals, and they were in a hurry. Next, they took A Lady and Gentleman in Black by Rembrandt, another Dutch masterpiece. painted in 1633, a double portrait of a married couple worth tens of millions. They cut it from the frame. Then they took Rembrandt's only seascape, The Storm on the Sea of Galilee. Painted in 1633, it depicts Christ calming a storm on the Sea of Galilee. It's a dramatic, powerful work, one of Rembrandt's most celebrated paintings, worth at least $100 million. They cut it from the frame. They also took a small self-portrait etching by Rembrandt, just a postage stamp-sized piece. Why? No one knows. Then they moved to another Rembrandt, a second small portrait. Gone. 5 works by 2 of the greatest artists in history. But they weren't done. The thieves moved to other parts of the museum. In the short gallery, they took 5 drawings by Edgar Degas, sketches of horses and riders, not as valuable as the Rembrandts or the Vermeer, but still worth millions. In another room, they took a Chinese bronze beaker from the Shang dynasty, over 3,000 years old. And then, oddly, they took the finial from a Napoleonic flag, a bronze eagle that sat atop a flagpole. Why? It wasn't particularly valuable. It wasn't a masterpiece. To this day, no one understands why they took it. In total, the thieves stole 13 pieces, paintings, drawings, objects. The total value? Conservative estimates say $500 million. Some experts say it could be closer to $1 billion. But here's the thing. The thieves left behind pieces that were worth just as much. In the same room as the Vermeer, there was a painting by Titian, worth over $100 million. They didn't take it. There was a Botticelli. They didn't take it. There were other Rembrandts. They didn't take those either. Why? That's one of the enduring mysteries of this case. Were they working from a shopping list? Did they run out of time? Or did they simply not know what they were looking at? At 2:45 a.m., 81 minutes after they entered, the thieves left. They walked out the same side door they came in. They loaded the stolen art into a vehicle, no one knows what kind. A car? A van? There were no witnesses, no surveillance cameras on the street. They vanished into the night. Downstairs, in the basement, the 2 security guards were still handcuffed to the pipes, duct tape over their eyes. They had no idea what had been taken. They had no idea how long they'd be there. At 8:15 a.m., the museum's day shift arrived. They found the side door ajar, the security desk empty. They called out. No answer. And then they heard muffled sounds from the basement. They found Abath and Heston still bound. The police were called immediately. Within hours, the FBI was on the scene. This wasn't just a robbery. This was an international incident. The stolen works were irreplaceable. Some of the most important paintings in Western art, gone. The investigation began immediately, and it would become one of the longest, most exhaustive investigations in FBI history. The first question investigators asked, how did this happen? The answer was uncomfortable. The museum's security was woefully inadequate. There were no cameras inside the building, none. The only camera was at the exterior door, and it had been knocked out by the thieves. The motion detectors didn't cover the Dutch room, where the most valuable paintings were kept. The guards were unarmed, and worst of all, there was a policy that if someone knocked on the door claiming to be police, the guards were supposed to let them in. The thieves knew this, or at least they suspected it, and they exploited it perfectly. But how did they know? That question would haunt investigators for decades. The FBI interviewed the 2 guards extensively. Richard Abath, the younger guard, came under immediate suspicion. Why did he buzz them in so easily? Why didn't he call 911 to verify they were real police? And there was something else. Abath had opened the side door earlier that night, around midnight, before the thieves arrived. Security log showed he'd unlocked it, stepped outside briefly, then came back in. Why? Abath said he was just checking to see if everything was okay outside. But investigators wondered, was he signaling to someone? Was he letting accomplices know the coast was clear? Abath was interrogated multiple times. Polygraph tests, background checks. The FBI turned his life upside down, but they never found definitive proof that he was involved. In interviews years later, Abath maintained his innocence. He admitted he made a terrible mistake by letting the thieves in, but he said he was just a scared 23-year-old who didn't know what to do. Was he involved? The FBI still isn't sure. Some investigators think he was. Others think he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. The other guard, Randy Heston, was also investigated, but he passed polygraphs and had no suspicious connections. He was cleared relatively quickly. So if the guards weren't involved, who was? That's where the investigation gets murky. In the weeks after the heist, the FBI received hundreds of tips. People claimed they saw suspicious vehicles near the museum. Others said they heard rumors in Boston's criminal underworld. Some tips were credible, most weren't. But one name kept coming up: organized crime. Boston in 1990 was a city with deep ties to the mob. The Irish mob, the Italian mob. These were powerful, well-connected organizations, and the FBI believed that a heist this sophisticated had to be connected to organized crime. Over the years, several names emerged. Carmelo Merlino, a mobster and cocaine dealer who ran an auto body shop in Dorchester. The FBI believed he was involved in planning the heist. But Merlino died in 2005 and no charges were ever filed. Robert Gentile, another mobster with ties to organized crime in Connecticut. The FBI searched his home multiple times. They found a list of the stolen paintings and their estimated values. But Gentile denied involvement until his death in 2021. Bobby Donati, a mob enforcer who was murdered in 1991, just a year after the heist. Some believed he was killed because he knew too much. David Turner and George Reisfelder, two career criminals who were in prison at the time of the heist but were suspected of being involved in the planning. Both men are now dead. The FBI investigated all of them, wiretaps, surveillance, informants, but they never found the paintings, and they never found enough evidence to make an arrest. Here's the frustrating truth about this case. The FBI knows more than they're telling. In 2013, the FBI held a press conference. They announced that they had identified the thieves. They knew who did it, but they didn't release the names. Why? Because knowing who did it and proving it in court are two different things. The statute of limitations for the theft has expired. The thieves can't be prosecuted anymore, but receiving or possessing stolen property is still a crime. So the FBI is focused on one thing: getting the art back. And that brings us to the $10 million reward. In 1997, the museum announced a $5 million reward for information leading to the recovery of the stolen art. In 2017, they doubled it to $10 million. It's the largest private reward in history. And yet, despite that massive incentive, not a single piece has been recovered. Why? There are a few theories. Theory 1, the art was destroyed. Some experts believe the thieves panicked When they realized how famous the paintings were, they couldn't sell them. They couldn't display them, so they destroyed the evidence. If that's true, it's a tragedy beyond measure. Theory 2. The art is in the hands of a private collector. There's a dark market for stolen masterpieces. Billionaires who want to own something no one else can have. They buy stolen art and keep it hidden in private vaults, never to be seen again. If that's true, the paintings could still exist, but we'll never see them. Theory 3. The art is being held as collateral. In the criminal underworld, stolen art is sometimes used as leverage, insurance for deals, bargaining chips for reduced sentences. The FBI believes this is possible, that somewhere, someone knows where the paintings are, and they're waiting for the right moment to make a deal. Theory 4. The art has been cut up and sold in pieces. This is the nightmare scenario, that the canvases were cut into smaller sections and sold to multiple buyers, or that the paint was scraped off and the materials sold separately. If that's true, the masterpieces are gone forever. So where does the investigation stand today? As of 2025, 35 years after the heist, the case remains open. The FBI's art crime team continues to follow leads. They receive tips regularly, some credible, most not. The museum keeps the empty frames hanging on the walls, exactly where Isabella Stewart Gardner placed them over a century ago. They're a haunting reminder of what was lost, and a symbol of hope that one day the paintings might return. In recent years, there have been tantalizing developments. In 2015, investigators searched a property in Connecticut connected to Robert Gentile. They didn't find the paintings, but they found evidence suggesting he knew where they were. In 2020, a journalist named Stephen Kurkian published a book called Master Thieves, detailing his decades-long investigation into the case. He identified several suspects and laid out a compelling theory about where the art might be. But still, no recovery. The paintings remain missing. Let's talk about what this heist means. Because it's not just about money. It's not just about 13 stolen objects. It's about culture, history, heritage. The Vermeer that was stolen, the concert, is one of only 34 known Vermeers in the world. Losing it is like losing a window into the 17th century, a connection to a master who has been dead for 350 years. The Rembrandt seascape was the only seascape he ever painted. It's gone. We can see photographs, we can see reproductions, but the actual painting with its brush strokes and texture and light, missing. And it's not just art lovers who are affected, it's all of us. These paintings belong to humanity. Isabella Stewart Gardner wanted them shared with the world. And because of 2 thieves in 81 minutes, that's no longer possible. There's another layer to this story, the psychological impact. The guards who were on duty that night, their lives were never the same. Richard Abath, in particular, has been haunted by suspicion for 35 years. He's been interrogated, accused, doubted, and he's maintained his innocence the entire time. Whether you believe him or not, imagine living with that. The museum itself was traumatized. They upgraded security, installed cameras, hired more guards. But the damage was done. The empty frames on the walls are a constant reminder of the museum's greatest failure. And then there are the art historians, the scholars who spent their careers studying these works. To them, this heist wasn't just a crime. It was a personal loss, like losing a friend. So what can we learn from this case? First, security matters. The Gardner Museum had good intentions but terrible execution. They assumed that being a small, lesser-known museum would keep them safe. They were wrong. Today, museums around the world have studied this case. They've installed cameras, motion sensors, armed guards. They've made it harder for thieves, but they've also made it harder for visitors. There's a tension between access and security, between welcoming the public and protecting the art. The Gardner heist forced museums to confront that tension. Second, organized crime and art theft are deeply connected. This wasn't a random break-in. This was planned, coordinated, and it likely involved people with connections to the criminal underworld. Understanding that connection is key to solving cases like this. Third, time is the enemy. The longer a case goes unsolved, the harder it becomes. Witnesses die, memories fade, evidence disappears. 35 years is a long time. Many of the original investigators have retired. The original thieves are likely dead. But the FBI hasn't given up, and neither has the museum. Here's what makes this case so enduring. It's not just a mystery, it's a tragedy. Because somewhere out there, those paintings exist. Or they did exist. Maybe they're in a warehouse. Maybe they're in a vault. Maybe they were cut up and sold. Maybe they were burned. We don't know. And that not knowing, that's what keeps this case alive. People are obsessed with this heist. Amateur sleuths have spent years developing theories. Podcasts have covered it. Documentaries have been made. Books have been written. There's even a Netflix series in development. Why? Because we want a happy ending. We want those paintings to come home. And there's still hope. In 2023, a tip came in suggesting the art might be hidden in a location overseas. The FBI investigated. They didn't find anything, but they're still looking. The museum's director has said publicly that they believe the art still exists, that it's out there, and that one day someone will come forward, maybe for the $10 million reward, maybe for a reduced sentence, maybe because they're dying and they want to clear their conscience. But one day, the museum hopes those empty frames will be filled again. Let me leave you with this. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist is the greatest unsolved art crime in history. For 35 years, investigators have chased leads, interrogated suspects, followed tips, and they're no closer to recovering the art than they were on March 18, 1990. But the case isn't cold, it's very much alive. The FBI is still investigating. The museum is still offering the reward. And somewhere, someone knows something. Maybe it's you. Maybe you've heard a story. Maybe you know someone who knows someone. If you do, the museum wants to hear from it. Because this isn't just about solving a crime. It's about bringing those paintings home, returning them to the public, honoring Isabella Stewart Gardner's legacy. 13 pieces, $500 million, 35 years, and the mystery endures. This has been the story of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist, the crime that shocked the art world and remains unsolved to this day. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. This is what we do here on Mind Veil. Deep dives into the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. If you want more content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below. Do you think the paintings still exist? Do you think we'll ever see them again? Who do you think did it? I read every comment. And if you want to see more unsolved heist documentaries, check out our full playlist in the description. We just covered the 2025 Louvre heist, And the parallels between these two cases are fascinating. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, some mysteries are never meant to be solved. But that doesn't mean we stop searching.